and welcome to this Assassin's Creed Valhalla cinematic reveal trailer reaction and response video. I've been wanting to share my thoughts on this ever since the trailer went live yesterday, about 18 hours ago or so. But as soon as I hit that live stream button, the internet just went through the floor. I was getting very, very small, if in fact at times no upload speeds whatsoever. And I think presumably all my neighbors are watching Netflix at the same time. Everyone's just got on board and is just hogging the internet. It's very frustrating. I tried again a little earlier today. You may have seen there was an attempt to live stream, but that failed too. And so instead, this recorded version will have to do. I was looking forward to a bit of a live conversation, but we can have a chat in the comments below. And anyone who did turn up for the live stream yesterday before it was killed by the internet speeds would have seen that I initially was reflecting on this artwork that was revealed the day before the trailer went live. This was artwork hinting at the trailer, and also it's been said, yeah, quote, hinting at the future of the Assassin's Creed franchise. And it gave me pause for thought. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a very interesting name. We had heard the name Assassin's Creed Ragnarok at one point. I prefer that name personally, but that's by the by, really. But it's actually aspects of this art, in particular, for example, this castle here, that really concern me. And it's interesting because in the 18 hours since I first talked about this, I've seen friends and colleagues on Twitter being very positive about this game, very excited, in fact, and it is an exciting prospect, Vikings in Assassin's Creed. But with that has come a certain call to not trash the game. You know, be positive. Just celebrate the fact that the game is taking it, paying attention to a period that you love, that people are putting out there. But I would say actually that there's a middle ground. You don't have to be massively negative. You don't have to be super positive, but you can walk a fine line of loving criticism when it comes to a franchise like Assassin's Creed. And for me, it does come from a place of genuine love. I love Assassin's Creed. I first played the original game back in York when I lived and worked there at the Assassins at the Jorvik Viking Centre, the Assassin Centre, and I loved the developer's attention to detail, particularly architectural and aspects of cultural detail that was brought out through subtle elements of gameplay. You were exposed to certain historical characters and little cultural things. In that instance, for example, in Jerusalem, in the second and third game, Assassin's Creed 2, which is possibly one of my favourites, and Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, they really built on, in particular, the architectural and economic aspects of the games, and it was the attention to detail when it came to, for example, scanning buildings in Rome to make sure that they were portraying, the amphitheatre and so on and so forth, the amphitheatre, the Colosseum, in certain ways. I very much appreciated. It felt as though you were walking through a version of history that was never too egregious. It was never utterly, well, wrong, as it were. There were some aspects here and there where they fudged timelines and who was alive when and this kind of thing, but it was never quite what they've done with this artwork. You see, this castle here is a 13th century building. It's later medieval, as it were, later than early medieval. But here, not only is it standing, but it's had time to be ruined. It's falling apart, possibly because of the Viking attack, but it just shouldn't be there. The Northumbrians were not building like that at this point. In speaking of the Northumbrians, these guys here are wearing armor that's completely bizarre. This sort of plate mail almost effect, sort of snake skin made out of little bits of metal. The capes are strange. The gear and the strapping is all wrong. It's art directed to the point of being wholly inaccurate, and that pulls me out of the game. There's also aspects actually of what the main character is wearing that's a bit dodgy as well. But my point has been made. The point being that I'm concerned that this game might not be what I hoped it would be. Anyway, let's watch the trailer. Let's see what we make of this.
They are heartless. godless barbarians.
Something I like is the way that the narrator is saying one thing and the imagery is counteracting it. Is showing you actually they're not heartless, they're not godless, uh, they're not animals. That's quite cool.
They murder and kill blindly.
No, they don't. You see, that's quite cool. I like it. Normal people are
They
living in
scar the
wooden
lands
huts.
of England.
The lands of
Lands
England.
they will never defend, never love. The time has come to speak to them in a language they will understand.
I think it's meant to be Alfred the Great. It looks a little bit like an homage to the Vikings TV series at this point, I have to say. Which on the one hand is good in places, and the other hand is not in places. You always have to have an arrow volley with fire on it, don't you? Interestingly, I would be criticising the size of the battle here, in so much as raiding parties are often less than 20 people. But actually, I suppose this is post-Heathen Army, so maybe it's the remnants of the Great Army, who knows. Oh look, Ragnar Lothbrok is seeing Odin again. It's very much inspired by the show, isn't it? That guy's superhuman. He's had a sword through the knee. I kind of like the guy's helmet, but also don't. He was an assassin all along. Okay. So on the one hand, I think there were some clever things in there. I like the way that everything that Alfred is saying is being counteracted by the imagery. They're not
heartless.
they're not heartless. Look, he's got a family. They do have a religion. They're not godless. Here they're approaching a statue of Odin,
Barbarians.
a practitioner of the religion, blessing with blood. Yeah, so they have religion. They don't kill without discretion, which is accurate, actually, as far as we can tell.
They scar the lands of England. Lands they will never defend.
That's not true.
Never love.
Yeah, and again, the imagery is counteracting it.
The time has come to
But
speak to them
this,
in a language they will understand.
this is the stuff that's really concerning me. This is truly the trap that the Vikings TV series and The Last Kingdom fell into, is portraying a pseudo high medieval, if that's the right terminology, but later medieval England at a time when England wasn't really a thing, and when all of this accoutrement, especially living in stone castles, also wasn't necessarily a thing. it plays into stereotypes of Englishness, English monarchy and royalty, and the English bad guy. We see it in, for example, in the film Braveheart with Edward Longshanks and so on and so forth. This is compelling imagery, but it has no real place in a Viking game, a historic Viking game set in the ninth century. Um, Particularly, I mean, of course, you know, by this point, people like Alfred were known to have the terminology like a broader England was floating around, but it was by no means a solidified thing. Uh, the Vikings landed in Northumbria, and the Northumbrians had to respond to it. And then they landed in East Anglia and successfully set up a stronghold there, and then spread north to York and so on and so forth. And part of the reason why they're able to do that was because there wasn't a single unified enemy or unified response. Now, this may well be what we're seeing here is that Alfred responds to Vikings arriving by starting to unify people and have successful attacks against Vikings, which is what he did in history. But he probably didn't look like that and probably didn't wear clothes like that. It's an well, as I said on Twitter yesterday, it's an Errol Flynn style medieval that doesn't quite ring true, and I think that's a shame. Let's take a look at the artwork while I continue to ramble on, because I mean, I'm encouraged by aspects of the game that I've since heard and read about overnight. For example, the fact that apparently you're going to be building up a town in Scandinavia, very much, well, actually similar to previous Assassin's Creed gameplay elements in Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood. For example, you had holdings and businesses that you were encouraging through patronage and also through investing in them, and presumably that's going to be an element of this game tied in with aspects from Black Flag and Origins and Odyssey, and I think it will work really well in this model. But I can't help but be concerned about just aspects of what's been presented to us so far. It looks like, well, it looks like more of the same. And that surely shouldn't be the job of an Assassin's Creed game. I've always enjoyed the fact that you would go, is that real? You go look it up and you go, oh, that is kind of realistic. And in this instance, they've gone in the other direction. They're showing you something that is wholly unrealistic because it fits in with other franchises, as I say, Vikings TV series, The Last Kingdom, movie portrayals, so on and so forth. It's it's what I compared on Twitter last night to serving people cake and just giving them cake. Of course, people are always going to like cake and they're always going to want more cake if you offer it to them. But if they always have cake, they're never going to learn the benefits and the glory of a full meal, starter, main course, and cake with a nice glass of wine or a whiskey or something. And this, in not challenging preconceptions about, for example, stone castles and the English uh, being attacked by the Vikings, in not challenging that, the Assassin's Creed game at this juncture anyway is missing a trick, arguably. I mean, for example, they've even fallen into the trap that Last Kingdom in particular was guilty of, and also actually the Viking series, in portraying sort of quasi-Roman or post-Roman sort of soldiers on the battlefield with these sort of Norman-style shields, or certainly horse rider-style shields. The Saxons weren't necessarily um, into well, actually, they weren't necessarily distinguishable in many ways from the Vikings. The Vikings, actually, in this trailer, do have round shields and the accoutrement that they're meant to have. You know, relatively heavy sword, shield, spear, and throwing axes. This kind of thing. And some of this is good. I mean, like the helmet that this chap here is wearing is actually based on a Roman cavalry helmet, a design that was passed on into the post-Roman world because it was a good design, very similar to, well, for example, King Raedwald's helmet from Sutton Hoo. But what's it doing on that guy? You see what I mean? These helmets wouldn't be this common unless these guys are elite guard, which they may well be given the crest on the shield, but the shield is all wrong. They've fallen into the footballification, as it were, of the sides of the teams, red versus blue, round versus ovoid shields, and that may be useful for entertainment and for gameplay, but does it really have a place in a game series that's prided itself so far on trying to show elements of history and to surprise and delight with that? Um, I'm encouraged by the fact that Jackson Crawford yesterday announced that he can finally talk about his role in consulting on this game, and therefore I'm sure, or fingers crossed, if he's been listened to, I'm sure that the aspects of Viking culture will come through, Norse language probably, and the use of runes and stories and so on and so forth. Hopefully that'll be a strong point in this game. And I do reserve the caveat that in previous releases, say with Assassin's Creed 3, the cinematic trailer where Connor was charging the British forces really bore little resemblance to the final product, the game itself. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I suppose there is one little thing that I did spot in the trailer. And maybe if we just go through, can we see any evidence of, for example, wooden palisades or structures? So, I mean, behind this chap, just then we saw, I think, what looks like a stone cathedral type structure being built. That guy's just had his leg chopped off. Uh, Nice and gory. Um, no, see stone castle structure there, little tower. So stone castle and behind you, man, the fairly stereotypically looking sort of actually kind of feudal sort of Englishman kind of bad guy look. Behind him, we see a bit of what looks like a stone cathedral being built just up here, I think, in the background. So, yeah, it looks as though the stone structures are there, and building like this at this particular point uh, wasn't wasn't taking place, unfortunately. Um, I hate to say it. I know it may well seem like a nitpick, but I am only nitpicking because I love the franchise so much and because I want the game to be to be wonderful. I want it to be a great game and to have things that don't just pull me out of it. And unfortunately, it doesn't look as though that's going to be the case. Anyway, hopefully this has been interesting. Please don't think I'm just crapping on the game. I'm not. I want it to be enjoyable, but I want it to be more than a fantasy game. And so there are apps right now that advertise all the time on YouTube where you can be a Viking. I think it's called Clash of Clans or something like that. And that has this sort of stuff in it. And I don't mind that in the app because it's an app, it's a mobile game or whatever. I just wanted a little bit more from the first reveal of this game. But we'll see. We'll see where it ends up. What I will say though is that I'm unlikely to be buying or pre-ordering the game, but also buying I think there's a gold edition and there's a 91 pound sort of Supreme edition that has a is it season pass and DLC and so on and so forth. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm there yet. So we'll see what happens next. But there we go. Hopefully this has been interesting. Please do comment below. Please do share your thoughts. And I recognise that there is space for fantasy fulfillment games. The Beowulf game that came out on Xbox 360 years ago now, linked with the animated Beowulf movie, the Robert Zemeckis movie, was in that vein. There was also actually a vein there was also a game I think called Viking as well that was similar in look to this, and it was utter fantasy, utter fantasy. So I just wanted something that looked a bit more grounded, a bit more in keeping with Assassin's Creed. But then again, Assassin's Creed of late, they've moved into all sorts of weird and wonderful places with the gods, for example, turning up in DLC and monsters and things in DLC in the Assassin's Creed Odyssey end game, as it were. So, yeah, lots to unpack, lots to think about. But I just wanted to get it out there because this internet's been bothering me no end. Have a lovely weekend, guys. You can expect this month's watching brief to be coming very, very soon. And until next time, do take care. Bye bye.